The Boy and the Heron just turned the tables on Disney. It's more than just a film. It's a bold statement that could potentially reshape what we expect from animated films going forward. But what makes Miyazaki's newest film so special, and how did it succeed where Disney failed? In the year that was supposed to be a celebration of 100 years of Disney animation, the hand-drawn animated film making waves with critics and the box office was in fact not a Disney movie. Flying in defiance of 3D animation, Studio Ghibli's latest masterpiece, The Boy and the Heron, is a shining example of how hand-drawn animation still has plenty of stories to tell. Does this mean that Disney is going to follow suit and create more hand-drawn animations? After all, the overwhelming consensus is that Wish should have been 2D animated, especially if the studio is using this film to celebrate 100 years of animation, so why didn't Disney go this route? The answer is not so much why they didn't make it 2D, but rather why they can't make it 2D. In fact, the reason Disney can't make 2D animations in-house anymore is also the very same reason why The Boy and the Heron is a modern-day masterpiece and is worth celebrating. Here's exactly what The Boy and the Heron did to prove Disney wrong. This film is yet another final film from the Japanese animator Hayao Miyazaki. If you're familiar with animation, you probably know his works already, but for the few of you who don't, he's basically the Walt Disney of Japan, although even just that undersells how much of an impact this filmmaker has had on the world of animation. His films often deal with themes of grief, loss, and finding magic in a world filled with chaos. The Boy and the Heron is no exception. The story is about a boy coping with the death of his mother, who discovers a world in which his mother might still be alive. Guided by a talking heron, he escapes into a wonderland where life and death is one and the same. The main theme is that life presents us with a choice. You can try to control every detail of your world and drive yourself into madness, or you can embrace the inherent unpredictability of life and focus on the joy found in things we can influence. It's important to frame the discussion about this movie with this theme because it makes every decision that Miyazaki takes from here on out make complete sense. Think about it. Miyazaki made a career creating some of the most captivating and compelling hand-drawn animated films. The very act of creating an animated film is an act that requires you to control every single detail of the world that you create. Every object, character, location, or magic effect has to be created or drawn by hand. Nothing is there by accident. This is the way that Miyazaki has patiently operated for decades. This movie took Miyazaki and his team 7 years to make. Studio Ghibli was not given a deadline for this film. The project is done when the project is done, not when the shareholders or the studio demand for it to be done. The result is a film with painstaking detail in every frame, featuring characters that we can get to know just by how they run, stumble, and carry themselves in the world before they ever open their mouth. The Boy and the Heron feels different, not because of what's in the movie, but because of what's not in the movie. The film's opening scenes of the house are almost silent. It allows you the time to breathe in the air from this strange new world, just as Mahito does on his grand tour around the house. It asks you of your patience to leave behind the chaos of the real world and step into a place that feels frozen in time. The film becomes more and more abstract as it progresses, showcasing the power of animation by featuring zany creatures and bending the reality of the world, sometimes literally. Miyazaki created a world for us to enjoy that is free from chaos, just like the one Mahito discovers. And by the end of the film, it asks us, how do you choose to live? This is animation in its purest form. So what will Disney learn from this masterpiece? History has shown that Disney is quite capable of completely missing the point when it comes to learning lessons from other successful animated films. In the early 2000s, Disney had a string of 2D animations that underperformed at the box office. Disney had experimented with 3D animation for the film Dinosaur, but it depended on its relationship with Pixar to keep 3D animation in check. Then something happened in 2001 that shook the world over. Shrek found a story that resonated with audiences by embracing the spirit of what DreamWorks was founded for in the first place, as being a staunchly anti-Disney company. On a modest $60 million budget, Shrek took in $500 million and established DreamWorks Animation as a competitor to the mighty Pixar. In addition to the success of Blue Sky's Ice Age in 2002, Disney learned to up its game when it came to storytelling for a modern audience and doubled down on what worked. Oh wait, no, actually they just fired most of their 2D animators instead. In pursuit of quicker, cheaper production, Disney's then CEO Michael Eisner shifted the company's focus to 3D animation, a move that led to significant layoffs and the closure of their Florida animation studio. This strategic pivot marked a departure from in-house 2D animation. Disney Research and Focus Group suggested that modern audiences perceive 2D animation as outdated. This prompted Disney to prioritize more profitable 3D projects. At the end of the day, Disney is a business, and they're going to make decisions that benefit their shareholders first and foremost over any sort of dedication to the art of animation. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about Boy and the Heron, but we need to make a quick pit stop in the land of photorealistic animation to understand how we got to this moment in time, and why Miyazaki's film is a miracle. Now that 2D is old news in America, we can finally turn our attention to the golden goose that is 3D animation. Over the past 2 decades, 3D animation has become a major profit driver in the film industry. Among the top 100 highest grossing movies, 22 of them are animated, and only 1 is hand-drawn. The Lion King. And the highest grossing 3D animated movie is The Other Lion King. And yes, I'm calling this what it is, it's animation. Come on. I'm actually making a video that's gonna dive deeper into this trend, particularly focusing on the blurring lines between animation and motion capture. So make sure to subscribe to see that video. In my view, the shift towards 3D hasn't been without its drawbacks. In particular, I find that studios like Illumination, the creators of the Minions franchise, seem to have simplified the art of animation. From my perspective, they primarily target their content at children, opting for cheap slapstick humor that feels like a cinematic sugar rush. They often stick with the tried and true photorealistic aesthetic, offering up nothing new in exchange. This approach prioritizes instant gratification over storytelling depth, contributing to a widespread perception that animation is mainly just for children. As a result, this trend appears to overshadow more nuanced animated films that offer something for a broader audience. In response to the staleness of 3D animation from the 2010s, recent films such as Spider-Verse and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish have challenged this narrow view, showcasing innovative animation styles and storytelling that appeals to all ages. They represent a growing movement to remind audiences and Hollywood that animation is a versatile medium, capable of conveying complex, meaningful narratives beyond just children's stories. This shift is crucial in redefining animation's role in cinema and highlighting its untapped potential. Miyazaki has the same thought, but takes a much different approach. Now that we finally understand the current landscape of animation, let's talk about why The Boy and the Heron is a diamond in the rough. The main theme of Boy and the Heron is all about accepting that the world is chaotic, but feeling grateful for the things that you can control. I don't think it's that much of a stretch to apply this to the current state of animation. Miyazaki has famously decried 3D animation, saying that he believes the tool of an animator is the pencil. Years ago, he was shown an AI tool to automate some 3D animation, and he replied by saying, "I would never wish to incorporate this technology into my work at all. I strongly feel that this is an insult to life itself." Whoa. It's evident that Miyazaki has strong reservations about 3D animation, and it's reasonable to think that he might view the current trajectory of animated content with some skepticism. While the exact reasons for Miyazaki's decision to come out of retirement again to create The Boy and the Heron are known only to him, it's tempting to speculate that it could stem from a desire to challenge the dominance of 3D animation and reaffirm the value of traditional hand-drawn storytelling. The original working title was based off of a Japanese novel from 1937 titled How Do You Live? When asked about whether or not the movie would answer this question, Miyazaki responded by saying, "I am making this movie because I do not have the answer." So he set out on a 7-year journey to remain stoic in the face of the rampant growth of 3D animation. In the film, Mahito is a bitter and troubled child, a product of a world filled with chaos. It feels like this characterization can be applied to Miyazaki himself at the start of creating this film, bitter and concerned by the state of animation and storytelling. The Heron tells Mahito that his mother might still be alive and leads him into a wonderland where everything is controlled and constructed by granduncle. Kind of like how Miyazaki was convinced that by coming out of retirement he could prove that 2D animation was not dead and still had plenty of stories left to tell. Mahito comes to terms with the fact that the world is chaotic and unpredictable, but that he can accept this fact and still find joy in the things that he can control, like the relationship with his new mother. The connection to Miyazaki's discovery in creating this film couldn't be more clear. It feels like with this movie, he's learned to accept the fact that animation as a medium will continue to outgrow him, but rather than stay bitter about the fact that he can't control its trajectory, he's found joy in the things that he can still control, which in this case is what he always excelled at, hand-drawn storytelling. The Boy and the Heron is a masterpiece because it's unapologetic about what it is. The first half of the film is unusually quiet for an animation made in the 2020s because it's not meant to be a sugar rush. It's incredibly admirable how defiant this movie is to the idea of instant gratification. The more I sit with this movie, the more I understand his perspective. Animation is art and should be treated with as much patience and care as this movie clearly has. The purpose of art is not to compare it to other art, but to say something meaningful and truthful. Whether this movie wins Best Animated Film at the Oscars or not doesn't matter, because Miyazaki has cemented his legacy as one of the greatest modern-day storytellers. So how did The Boy and the Heron prove Disney wrong? It shows the power of compelling stories and how they can transcend mediums. Disney could feasibly invest in creating another 2D animation pipeline, but honestly, that would once again miss the point of this lesson. If Disney is willing to trust their storytellers to give authentic and captivating stories instead of leading with the consumer in mind, it would inherently lead to pushing the medium of animation towards a better future. But as we discussed earlier, at the end of the day, Disney is a business. Only time will tell what lessons they learned from The Boy and the Heron, if any, but I hope it leads to a future with more compelling animated films. If you're interested in more animations that are inspired by Miyazaki, you might enjoy hearing about the animation I'm currently working on. It's called New Venice, and it's a black and white animation for VR. It's Miyazaki meets film noir, so if you're interested, you can check out the launch video for this project here. If you want to hear me discuss other animated films like, say, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.